we have migrated quite a lot of documents. Some of the past migrations that we did is for one customer, we migrated more than 30 million documents. We've also done, let's say, some small migrations as well, just maybe a few million documents. But now, let's say, one of the more interesting one is we're doing a migration for, let's say, for a customer where we're moving more than 150 million documents, which are huge numbers.
Hey Ted, how are you?
Everything's fine on my end. What about you?
Yeah, very good. Thank you, mate. Very good. So thank you for joining me. I know that we've got a topic now which a lot of people have been asking us about recently, which is our migration tool. And I know that fits into a wider ecosystem, particularly in document management. But I thought it would be good if we could talk about some of the reasons we even created that tool. And I know you're the man to talk to. So can you give us a bit of an overview on what the migration tool we have is and where it fits into the ecosystem?
Yeah. Maybe a little bit of brief history of why we created the migration tool. These products exist because we have, why we are, an enterprise company. Doesn't matter if it's a small, medium, or large size. When you go into, one, DMS system, you have multiple location where you store the documents, right? So you need to have some way to migrate the data from the previous locations to your locations, right? We facilitate migrations from from a lot of different locations into external TCM, as well as outside of external TCM. That's more of a rare case. But we also facilitate that with the help of our migration tool. And then also why the migration tool was created is, we saw a gap in the market, because there's some of the offerings that are out there, including standards from some software vendors, as well as from other third-party companies like ourselves. They were not really streamlined and efficient of creating the data and moving it. So we saw a lot of room for improvement, how we can actually streamline the migration process of our customers, and that's how the migration tool was born.
Excellent. And that streamlining is important because we're not talking tens of documents here, are we? We're talking quite large volume.
Yeah, we have migrated quite a lot of documents. Some of the past migrations that we did is for one customer, we migrated more than 30 million documents. We've also done, some small migrations as well, just maybe a few million documents. But now, one of the more interesting one is we're doing a migration for a customer where we're moving more than 150 million documents, which are huge numbers.
Yeah, that is big numbers. And also it makes a big difference to the client, right? I guess it's the number one risk for a lot of them.
Yes, it is the main thing, because when you actually when you get to use a new system, what happens, you have the life cycle of the documents, right? And usually, for example, you can change a CRM system, you can change it every few years. You can change your project system again maybe every 5-6 years. But the documents, they stay for a very long time, right? Either for legal reasons, or for example, if it's employment contracts, or for example, some other documents that you need to keep in, they need to stay more than 10, 20, 30 years, right? So you need to have all the data in place when you actually get onboarded with your new DMS system. So it is quite important. And one of the things that we see is that customers, they really need to plan in beforehand, or as soon as possible, on their journey to their new DMS systems. They really need to plan this beforehand, so that all the needed data will be there by the time they go live with it, so they can make sure that the business processes are not stopped, right, and they can actually continue working as it is. So there's no interruptions on the business end.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really tough subject for a lot of people because it's, like you say, it carries a lot of risk. And that's the reason, I guess, the migration tool kind of came to bear. But we've also made changes to it quite consistently. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we do, right, is, I mean, since we're, let's say, we're quite hands-on with it, we get a lot of feedback from customers, right? And then we try it, and then we constantly try to improve it. Either, let's say, some small feature requests that are coming in, as well as, let's say, a little bit more of big stuff. For example, um, let's say, I mean, if we can maybe visualize it.
Mm.
Or let's say, I mean, the migration tool, let's say, what the migration tool does is, and what we talked about, the streamline process is that, I mean, you have a lot of locations, right, where you first pick up the metadata for the, let's say, for the files, and that goes into, let's say, into the migration tool database, where the migration tool uses it to then fetch the files. So, I mean, a lot of the, let's say, improvements that we've done is, for example, we support a lot of applications out of the box where we can connect to. For example, we have, let's say, we have extended TCM, we have SharePoint, different types of SharePoint. We can take documents out of Salesforce, and let's say many more systems. So I mean, as soon as, let's say, let's say a customer comes in, let's say, with some feature request to us, I mean, we, let's say, we try to implement it for them, so that I mean, the tool will help them, let's say, as much as possible. And I mean, let's say the interesting thing is that, I mean, let's say the migration tool will, let's say, if we look into, let's say, into point, let's say, 2 and 3 on this graph. This is, let's say, where the migration tool actually works and picks up information to, let's say, to put into, I mean, in this particular case, into external TCM. But I mean, what we see is that, I mean, and let's say also from customer feedback, we have quite optimized the migration tool. Uh, so I mean, basically, let's say, let's say what happens is that the bottlenecks are mostly on the let's say, on the application side, where we pick the documents, and not so much on our end, as well as on the extended TCM and the extended TCM side. Since, I mean, through all these, let's say, continuous feedbacks and improvements, we managed to make the, let's say, the migration to, let's say, work quite efficiently, and as well as optimize it. I mean, we've reached more than close to migrating more than 1 million documents per day. I mean, that's with, let's say, with a lot of improvements, right? But we are up there, as well as, let's say, with the numbers.
Yeah. Can we talk a bit about how clients kind of come to us? What's the first thing what's the reason they're coming to us to look at the tool?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is that, I mean, it's, let's say, if you really haven't done this thing before, right, it can be very overwhelming, since you have a lot of source systems, or you can have a lot of locations where the documents are stored, and you really need to have, let's say, a really good, let's say, migration strategy, right? How you need to actually execute your migration. Otherwise, you'll be stuck in a place where, yeah, you either not be ready by, let's say, by your go live date, or you will not, let's say, you will not have the let's say, the correct information in the system, because we also see this happen, right? I mean, since there's just so much stuff, and one of the things that we advise our customer side is that we really need to filter out the data that you actually need, right? Because, I mean, a lot of customers, what they usually say is, let's say, please just move everything, but that's not the correct approach, right? So if we can actually filter the data and the content beforehand, before it gets in the system, we get a lot of benefits from that, right? Because the first thing is that let's say, there's no junk data in the system, and then you don't need to, let's say, you don't stress the, let's say, the infrastructure and the system. So that's, let's say, like, lower cost, as well as you have the correct data, right? So there is no need for you to do data cleaning afterwards, right? Because, I mean, what we see is that a lot of people, they just like to hoard documents, which is not ideal, right? You really need to learn to let go of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So, because not everything is needed. So, I mean, that's one of the things that, let's say, that we advise our customers to do. Otherwise, it will just be a big mess, right? And we're also now having a discussion. Let's say, one of the migrations that we did, I mean, after it took them more than 6 years to decide to delete some documents which were not needed in the first place, right? So we can also reduce the scope of the migration if we filter down the documents. I mean, there will be lower cost all around. So this is one of the things that advise our customers to do.
Yeah, that's efficiency is important there, and I guess that also feeds into the foundations of AI that people are currently looking at. If you know what data you have and you have it consistently placed, it makes it much easier to search, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Then we also get to the topic of AI, right? I mean, there is now a lot of AI buzz around. I mean, we have, let's say, I'm actually working on AI project with, let's say, with a customer of ours, which is, let's say, which is quite interesting. But I mean, this is also what we see, right? Is that you really need to give the AI correct data, right? Otherwise, if your data is too noisy, then the AI will not really help you out, right? Because I mean it's like, let's say, when you have a lot of books in front of you, and you try to pick up information, right, and you find out that some of the books are useless and you're just wasting your time and you're not getting correct answers from them, right? So if you can just put the concrete data in place, then it will be much more efficient. Let's say, also to facilitate your future processes, either it's AI or let's say or something else down the road.
Yeah, it comes up commonly, doesn't it? So for me, the things it supports, when you have your document structure correct and you can move your data that you actually need and you sort of declog it, for want of a better term, that supports your compliance. It supports your regulatory requirements as well. It's going to help you with any generative AI you want to do, any indexing, any searching, and fundamentally, like I think we worked out something like 30% of time. I forget the exact figure. I'll have to dig it out. Was people spend on their workday searching, and I think that's incredible. If you can reduce that time by making sure that things are in the right places, contextually correct and easy to find, then people are free to do other things. How does so a point you made earlier about us connecting to things like Salesforce, taking documents from there. Um, a lot of people that, in my experience, working both here and in places I've been before, have a problem with their data in silos. That they don't know how to get over it or past it, and then it keeps compounding because they keep adding more and more to those silos rather than finding the fix. Is this something that you've seen as well, and have you used the migration tool to kind of alleviate that pain point a bit?
Yeah, I mean, let's say when you first start, right? It could be that let's say you just have your DMS system connected, let's say connected to just one application, right? For example, it may be connected to, let's say, to Salesforce. But later down the road, if you want to introduce, let's say, let's say this one common DMS system, right, which a lot of companies try for, let's say in the scope, what you need to do, right? You need to migrate the documents from the old applications. I mean, is it going to be SharePoint, which we see with a lot of customers, right? We take, for example, we take the documents from the SharePoint system and then we put it inside the correct place and the correct container, which is very important, right? What our migration tools does quite well is, based on the metadata that you provided, it will be able to create all the workspaces, all the containers for the documents, as well as position all documents inside of it. I mean, as well as, I mean, they will have a lot of robust, let's say, error handling and auditing, so that we make sure that everything is moved. And I mean, you'll be able to see, right, if there is something failed. And I mean, we are, I mean, almost, I mean, you cannot be 100% sure, right? But I mean, 99.99%. We say that, I mean, we make sure that all the documents and everything else is inside the system, right? So that they can decommission their old application, their old DMS storages.
Yeah, that's a money saving gold mine, isn't it? You get that right.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, also when, let's say, also when you actually go into, let's say, into this one common DMS, right? I mean, you save quite a lot of money because you streamline it, as well as you reduce costs, right? I mean, if you have, let's say, if you have using, let's say, if you're using different document storages for different business units or different processes inside your company, you're just going to spend a lot more money than just having one common place where you're going to put everything, right? Because that's the I mean, you're saving a lot of money by just scaling up, right?
Yeah, and it's a living. Yeah, I mean, we've moved sort of from migration tool to document management and extended ECM as a product. Um, it's a living, breathing thing, right? As you bring more applications online, you connect. Therefore, it consistently grows. Is that a fair thing to say?
Yeah, it's a fair thing to say, right? And then this is where the migration tool helps quite a lot, right? Because you can just take the migration tool. Let's say, for example, for 1 month, just move all your documents, right? You have to, let's say, few million documents. You just move them, right? And then you make sure that, before the new application goes live, you will be ready. You'll be ready, and then users do not know the difference, right? They will have all the data, everything else in place, and then as I said, right, we made this streamlined as possible, so that the only thing that let's say our customers will need to do, right, they just need to provide the metadata as well as the actual location where the documents are stored, and then we take care of all the mapping and everything else so that the content goes into the correct place.
And to get to a more technical level here as well, um, who is implementing this? Like, I know we go in and we support people when we run it, but who's running it internally? Who's the kind of owner of that?
You mean from the customer side or from our
Yeah,
side?
yeah, from a customer side.
For customer side. We have a couple of options that we usually do this. We have customers that say, okay, here is the metadata for documents, the locations. Please just take care of everything, doing the mapping as well as running the tool. We have those as well as we also let's say also what we support with our customers a little bit more of a hybrid approach, meaning that we just give them it's usually 1 or 2 days, right? We give them a handover, and then from that point on, they'll be able to take over, and then they'll be able to run the migration from their own, right? Because also we made the tool, let's say, quite streamlined. It's not that, like, for example, a business or is how you're like a marketing person can just go in and then start the tool, right?
What are you saying
That's
about
okay.
marketing people? What?
Yeah, it's not, the focus is not marketing people, but if you are, let's say, if you're let's say an IT person inside the company, you should be able to run the tool, because it's, let's say, the level of coding is almost minimal to none. You only need to understand a little bit of SQL. We also provide, let's say, pre-ready, let's say, how should I say, queries for the ETL process. So we just need to do a few tweakings, but you still need to be, let's say, you still need to be an IT person, right? But let's say with just basic IT knowledge, you should be able to, let's say, in a handover session from us, you should be able to, let's say, to start the tool and actually work with it.
Excellent. Yeah. So I'm just going to bring up obviously my role within Turnpike's there, marketing specialist, clearly not capable of operating a migration tool. But I've had a few conversations with clients at different stages of their digital transformation journeys. And the interesting thing that always comes up is, when should I look at this? Like, at what point in the process should I be thinking about my documents? Do you have any advice for clients about when they should start?
Yes, I've seen this quite a lot. The basic and principle that I say with, let's say, with all customers is, you really need to look into your, let's say, into your documents as soon as possible, right? Because what happens is that, you have all your system, right? That, for example, that they can create quotes, they handle all the CRM stuff, project, and so. Those systems, they work in terms of metadata, right? But at the end of the road, you always have a document, right? At the end of each business process, you need to create a document. Either that will be stored, let's say, internally for your company, or it will be given out externally, right? To, let's say, to your partners. You always end up with a document. So as soon as you actually start, let's say, your business process, and you start, let's say, to map everything to your, let's say, to your business need, you really need to start looking into how you're going to store the documents, right? The sooner the better, because we've seen with, let's say, with a lot of customers, they have, let's say, they do a great job of, let's say, of implementing, let's say, their business processes. Everything is, let's say, detailed, and everything is done, let's say, how you say, by the book, but they don't really think about the documents up until they're, let's say, quite late in the process, and they're coming to us and say, okay, guys, we are now in a little bit of a pickle. because we're having issues, right? We don't know how to store the documents, how all this should work, right? We haven't thought with it, and then we need to come in and let's say let's say do miracles in a very short amount of time, which is quite hard to do, right? And then if this is actually scoped in from the beginning of the project, then we'll have, let's say, much better results.
And it's cheaper, right? Like,
yeah, also
yeah.
that.
I think that's the one thing our clients would always want to hear. Planning this, and we've talked about it in a few other interviews actually, where we talked about where do you start with documents for extended ECM for, do you go for HR documents first? Do you go for sales process? And I do think it comes down to what the business goals are. Obviously, that changes things. But no matter what, document-led is the way to go, because you're only as good as the data, right? You're only as good as the information you have and the documents you hold. So if you are going to be looking at making those changes, you should be thinking about what's going to go into it first.
Yeah, and as I said, right, you really need to have this from the very beginning, because that makes our job much more easier, and then we're also more flexible, right, to facilitate, let's say, any changes, or let's say, or if you have some very specific business need, right, it doesn't need to be specifically for HR or for contracts, which are a little bit more streamlined processes, right? But what we see is that, let's say, every migration and every SAM project we have, the customer is totally different, right? There is no, let's say, same extended SAM project. It's not the same as SVN, right? You have the process there is streamlined, right? You just have one process, but here it's I haven't had, let's say, a customer use a system in the same way.
Yeah, there's individuality to every project, but there are similarities which our experience kind of helps people along with. But also, most clients get it as well. I don't think anyone comes in and we explain that to them and then they suddenly say, "Oh, I never thought of that." It's just sometimes it's nice to have that backed up by an external party as well, right?
Yeah. That's why we're here, right? We're here to let's say, to help and assist and give our best practices, so that we make sure that the client can have let's say the best possible solution that they can do.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Ted. Really appreciate talking to you today, and hopefully we can catch up again soon on some more updates to the migration tool. So I think people will be interested in the new features that we're bringing out.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much for watching. If you'd like to see more from us, check out other content on our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on social media, or you can visit us at www.turnpikes.pro. Feel free to subscribe to get upcoming notifications of our new content, and we look forward to seeing you very soon.